Hey lovely people, Jonathan McMahon is Painted and welcome to my channel. So over the last couple of weeks I've had many new subscribers to my channel and I'm truly grateful for all of you new guys hitting that subscribe button, and of course all of you guys that have followed me from the beginning. I am truly blessed, and I honestly think that you guys that have just found me have found me through two projects, and they were both decoupage, one of which was fabric decoupage, the other one was napkin. So whilst I'm on that theme, I'm going to stick with decoupage and focus today. I will do application on this project. It's a small table project, but I want to focus on blending two images together. They are the same image, but I want to recreate my pattern and use paint to blend the two together. So let's take a closer look at the paper and the table that we're working on today. So here's the project that we're going to be working on today, and as you can see, this is a previous painted project. It was done by me about 5 years ago with a faux marble finish on the top. Unfortunately, this finish got damaged with a wet plant pot, so I've decided it's going to get a upcycle, and the paper that we're going to be using is Posh Chalk Deluxe papers. Now, I do have a range of papers under this brand called the House of Mendez, and this one is called Abundance, and we're also going to be using Posh Chalk infusers. So let's get stuck in with the canvas coat. Okay, I just want to take stock on what we're working on and answer a few questions that I've had in other tutorials and why. I've taken the paper out of its packaging. As you can see, it does not fit the circle of this tabletop. There's not enough paper to have the full pattern. And I'm bringing two in, so I've got two. So I've been playing around with the two. This Abundance pattern, it's got a slightly curved edge to it, so I will work a curved swag. I don't want to fill this circular top. I just want to add one side of a swag to it. So many of these papers, certainly the ones that I've been involved in, there's a lot of dead space on some of the paper, which helps you blend the colour tones from one to another when using paint. Also, another good question that I had is, even on the fabric decoupage, why would you use a pale background? Why not just stick it down to whatever the surface you've got? And this is the reason. If you see here, if I put this white card across the image, if I move it around, you can see that the paler areas of this pattern on a white background really pop. Also with this kind of paper, this is rice paper, and you can see there's fibers in the paper. Now, if you don't use a pale background, they will certainly stand out much more on the surface of your image. So I'm using Annie Sloan Old White as my canvas coat. You could use any of the pales, but the truer the white is, the better it will be. And I'm just gonna basically cover the whole surface with a white coat of paint. Also, whilst talking about why having a white surface, and many people ask me on my fabric decoupage, why would I do that? The other reason is lots of furniture can give bleed through. If you've used chalk paint on furniture before, sometimes you can paint it and you'll get dirt coming through the wood surface, which will then appear on the top surface of your paint finish. Now, this will also happen even with fabric decoupage. So if you've got pale areas on fabric decoupage, then you are going to get bleed through. So this will indicate whether you do need to use a blocking primer. I always give one quick coat. It will need two to give real good coverage, but one quick coat of white paint will indicate whether that's going to happen to the surface of the piece of furniture. So first coat, so good. I have one tiny little bit of bleed through there. Nothing to write home about. I am not gonna worry about this. No priming needed. I'm just gonna go straight on with another coat of old white chalk paint, just to build up the depth of the white paint. Also, you may notice that I'm just painting the whole circle surface. I'm not gonna leave areas. This is like an artist's canvas. It is the canvas coat to receive all of the other colours later on when we apply the decoupage. Any areas that haven't got the decoupage, we'll be painting over them. So just think of it like priming your canvas ready for your artwork. It doesn't have to be perfectly solid. It can have a few little flecks here and there. It'll add to the character. 2 coats should really be enough for this type of paper. So whilst we're waiting for the paintwork to dry on the tabletop, I've been taking a look at my 2 papers and how I'm going to connect these 2 patterns together. Now, I'm looking at this paper and there is a definite curve to the edge. So I'm going to use one sheet almost in its full, and then we're going to use the second sheet as the add-on flowers to that, so to connect the patterns together. So I've been folding this piece of paper to kind of look and think, right, I want that pattern to continue in a big swag, in one continuous sweep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the edges off this piece of paper, and then this one we're going to break down into maybe 3 elements. There's 3 clear elements in this one. This section, and this section. This one will be perhaps a little bit closer to the actual florals, and this one we're going to just lose the edges and kind of keep some of the background, because this is going to be our gauge to the paint colours when we start using paint. How we're going to do this, we're going to just use a wet paintbrush. So I'm going to go around all of the edges, just dampening the edges where we want to remove excess paper, all the way around, dampen them up, across here. Don't worry if you kind of get edges that are a bit raggy, that's exactly what we need. Also, I'm going to connect into this side of the paper. I know that that's going to happen, so I'm going to take this side that little bit closer to those roses, and then I'm going to come back up here. So we're going to keep all of this, and now we should be able to kind of just slowly tease away really softly. It gives you a really lovely edge. Without trying to lose too much of the actual design on these roses. So I'm holding my finger on the rose and just teasing away. The more frayed that you get this, the better it will be. So here you have it, that's the larger sheet done. So I'm going to move on to taking the separate elements away from this sheet of paper. So I'm going to start by taking this bottom section away for these 3 roses here. I'm going to come clean up to that rose edge and kind of wiggle around a little bit. You can come back later. If we need to take more away, we will do. We'll just come down here because we don't know where this is going to lay in our design. So I'll keep more, but I do know that the edge needs to be close. So there you have it, 3 sections of pattern from the other piece. I know you're thinking, wow, there's not much paper left. Do keep the excess pieces just in case you need to patch up anywhere, add a little bit more paper in. Like I said, these could be slightly smaller, but once the tabletop's dried, we're gonna place these down and try and work out truly where each piece goes, and we may have to kind of make them a little bit smaller again. Now for the fun part, we're going to take the largest of our cutouts and lay it down onto the tabletop and try and work out, like a jigsaw puzzle, where all of these pieces are going to go. So like I said, there's a curve in this branch which I really like, so I'm going to aim so that some of the roses sit along the edge in a curve, like so. I think that will be good, almost there. Then we're going to bring back some of the other elements and try and work out where these pieces really do need to go. I might place that one on the edge there, so you can see the pattern is growing. And maybe this one somewhere here. Jiggle them around a little bit. So it's just trial and error in where you think that these patterns may look good. I'm not so keen on that branch that goes off here, but that can be taken out. The last of the 3 pieces. And you've kind of got to look at this as a whole, where you think this looks good. I think I could actually lose this rose and that branch and bring this rose in instead, and it shortens that pattern, and I feel maybe that's good. Do I want to bring the pattern to the middle? Maybe not. It is trial and error. You've just got to kind of lay them down and stand away and kind of squint your eyes a little bit to try and see how you feel, because you've got to imagine this will be painted out. I don't want to go all the way around this table. I kind of want to arc the pattern, which means when I place a vase, it can sit in the dead space of the area rather than having the whole piece of furniture covered in this pattern, and then you're placing things over the top and then there's no benefit to this design. So I think that's kind of what I'm going to do. Do I need to bring this one? I'm trying to keep that one and that one away from each other. Could it be the other way around? No, I think it was good the way that I had it. Now I'm remembering which way I had it. I think it was like that. And that one poked into there. So the first thing that I'm going to do regarding this pattern, the largest design, this one, I'm going to lay down first. I know that's kind of where I want it to be. Don't worry about all of these white areas. We'll attend to them later. One thing that I might do is, rather than having these 2 straight edges, I might take a little bit more off this pattern and kind of go in a jiggly line. Let's do it now, because I know that I don't need all of that. I'm going to take it right up here and come across on an angle, rather than having these 2 very straight lines that we've got to blend away. So we'll take this away, same as before. Also, what you might find with these papers, rice papers with the fibre in them, the fibre is there to give strength. It's awesome. It really does give good strength, but you may need to pick away a few of the edge fibres, like so. So that's where we're going to lay it. we're going to be using Posh Chalk Infuser. This is like, it's like a top coat, guys. You can use this as a top coat. It goes underneath and over the top, and because this is permeable, it will saturate the paper and it will become as one. And we're also going to be using these Posh Chalk brushes. I think I call them palm brushes. They're probably not called palm brushes, but one large one for smoothing out application, the smaller one to add the infuser to the tabletop. So let's get stuck in with the infuser on the first piece. Right, I'm just going to kind of imagine where my area is. I'm going to go over the area, but I'm just going to peel this to one side. I know that it's going to go all here. So I'm dipping my brush into the infuser, and I'm going to be liberal. I'm going to go over the edges where, you know, beyond where I think the paper's going to be, so I don't miss anything. And this has got a lovely smooth texture to it. It glides on, so it's much easier. If you're using other glues, like I use PVA glue for different decoupages, probably a little bit too thick for rice paper. So this is awesome. Let's go with that. So now with laying down the paper, it is very forgiving, this paper. So if you get it in the wrong place, don't panic. Nothing's lost, it will be fine. You can peel it up a good few times. The fibres keep the strength in this style of paper. I'm happy with that placement. In with the larger brush. So I'm going to start from the centre and just spread out. If you get any little creases, you can peel back up and smooth back down. A little bit like wallpapering. So and notice that I'm working away from those fibres, so I'm spreading those fibres down. Same over here, spreading away for that seamless connection. I'm going to leave my edges just for the time being. We'll glue those bits down later. So that's nice and smooth. Can we remember where the pattern went? I think it was this one next. So here lies another issue. So when connecting your paper to paper, like if you remember at the beginning of the tutorial, we talked about the white. If I go over a dark area with white, you can see maybe with that rose just there, it changes the colour. So we do need to kind of allow a little wriggle room between the two. So I'm going to take this a little bit closer, just going to tease away a little bit more. If we have sections of white, that's fine. It doesn't really matter to have those little sections of white, because we can fix that with paint. So I'm going to add that to about here. I think that's where I want that one to be, maybe a little bit more. So I'm going to now scrape away this area while it's still wet. I know that I need a little bit more white here. I've scraped the paint, but not to worry. You can still play around with this. So it fits in there just nicely. A little bit more off here. And then I'm going to go back in with the infuser, just a little bit more infuser, just over the top. And connect this one back in where we want it. It is like jigsaw puzzles. There is a little bit of overlap there, but the leaf is quite dark, so I'm going to go with that. Smooth this down. Oh, there's a large amount of overlap there, so go back underneath. Didn't realise it was so much. Just tease that. Whilst it's still wet, guys, you kind of need to work whilst it's still wet. There we go. So now we have, bring it around a little bit. There, we have a good connection between the two. I'm not going to stick that edge down just yet because I know that I've got to come back and work the next piece in. So this one was going to go from this corner onwards, somewhere like so. So that's good. All I need to do is remove a little bit of this corner. Not much, but a little bit off the corner. It is fiddly work, but it's worth just taking your time, relax into it. So where did we have that? That rose is going to go in there, like so. So I'm going to take this rose right to the edge of this rose. I'm not using water, I'm just going for it. Right up to the very edge of that rose, which gives me a cleaner connection to join the two. Lovely, that's really good. And then there lies another issue. So we need to go, I'm going to use my paintbrush this time. I know that I've got a connection here. So I'm just going to go kind of work out where that connection is, lift it up and go back in and take this piece of paper out. A little bit more there. So that feels really good. I'm happy with where this is all going, so I can now use my smoother and just smooth this one back down. Back in with the infuser again, a little bit further over here. And find where we was placing this one. Can we remember where we was placing it? It's here, somewhere here. So I'm not worrying about, I am worrying about that piece, I don't want that. I'm not worried about where there's a gap, a river through. We're going to fix that river later on with paint, so don't worry about it. It looks messy, but it's okay. The best thing to worry about is the connections. The connections between one another are really important. Smooth that down. Last but not least, we're going to go, oh, mistake. I said I was going to take that one out, which I probably still am going to take it out, I think. I think it will be really good to take it out. So I'm going to do water again over here, just quickly lift it up, rip through this rose, take this rose away. This one's not going to be used, so off it goes. Let's check out whether we got a good, fairly good connection there. I'm going to bring it round a little bit. I'll take some more off this edge. Best thing to do, guys, not panic, just take your time. A little bit more on this corner, and I think we're good to go. That feels really good. So I'm going to use all of this piece of paper on that end piece. More infuser, you can overlap at this stage. It's a big piece of paper, so we'll go all over. wriggle it around a little bit, just checking that it looks good. It's on the edge. I'm quite happy with that. Am I happy with that? Maybe not. Does it need to come more round? A bit more freedom to the piece? I think it does. It needs to come right round here. So I'm going to lay it. Lay it there. I've wriggled around now, so that's where it's going to be. I'm going to go back in with my brush and take off this section because there's paper already there. A lot more paper there, that's it. So that's the one. More infuser because we've come wider than I expected. That can go down and smooth out. So it looks rather complicated, and at this stage it can kind of look a little bit strange. I'm going to go back in and peel away a little bit of here. I'm not worrying if I get white, it's fine. That's better. Because those white bits will go. Smooth down. And that's my layout of my pattern. So just take your time over it, be patient. We're going to let this set up a little bit, and then we're going to go over the top with the infuser everywhere. Okay guys, the infuser is nice and dry and ready to start the paint treatment, but I've brought you in as close as I can get. I'm hoping that you can see this on camera. The connection lines, this is why we try and make sure that there is no overlapping. There is slight overlapping with my connections. This pattern is really tight. So here and here you may see where it overlapped, it's gone slightly darker because the paper is on top of the darker paper, if that makes sense. But they're things that we can alter with paint. But I'm really pleased with this and this connection between the two. They're nice and tight together, and we can make them vanish with paint a little later. But onward to filling in all of the white areas, and we'll tackle these problems as we go through. So the brushes that I'm going to use today, I've got a Posh Chalk brush. This is a synthetic brush with a lovely point to the end of it, so it should be able to tuck into all of those little gaps. I've also got some Annie Sloan detail brushes, which will really help for the finer detail. I've got my mix mat out, and I've picked graphite, Enfleur. I've also got a little bit of Barcelona orange. I'm hoping that I can lighten the shade of brown. Notice that because we've twisted the pattern, there's a pale brown there and a pale brown there. This is something that I'm going to try and ombre across the piece, so we end up with the lighter brown on the edge and darker in here. Most of this floral has got quite dark background, so we're going to work with a darker mix of Enfleur and graphite together to create a deep dark tone for here and then blend across. This will probably get a little bit lighter and a bit darker in there. I've also got olive as well because there's little flecks of olive green in there. So let's get stuck in. I'm just loading up my mix mat with Enfleur and graphite, kind of splurging it around a little bit. And then we're going to start placing some colour in. At first, just take it steady. Don't worry too much. I'm going to use a kind of a tapping technique just to go into these finer details, going up to the edge of tickling up to the edge of that rose, into there, and around here. And I am going to overlap. That's taking care of some of that dark line there. It will need probably a couple of coats, but for now, just get some paint on, and it should take away a lot of the white background. I suppose this is just mapping out the paint where you kind of want it in areas. Sometimes a stippling motion really helps with this. These papers have kind of got textures in the background, so it really can add to the look. I'm picking a bit more graphite up here because it's darker. Kind of blending on the surface. I can see slightly olivey tones in there as well, so I may pick up a little bit of olive in there just to muddy that area up a little bit. More graphite. Once we've got this first layer on, it should really make a little bit more sense, the pattern, once we get rid of most of that white. Okay guys, so round one of the first layer of stippling, and it all looks really, really good at this point. Don't panic about the shininess and the mattness of paint. That can kind of throw you out. So also I can see on the camera, I want to add more Enfleur to one side, this sort of ombreing into the leaves, and more graphite. So the same thing again really, I'm just going to build up that tone. Now we've got this base layer on, it should go a lot easier. So again, I'm picking up the Enfleur and I'm going to do randomly stipple. And build it in. Trick is get your colours as near as you can find to the colours that you see in the background of the paper. But it is real good fun, and to be honest, the whole thing will look like a hand-painted piece once you've completed. So I've carried on working the blend, and I'm really happy with it. And as you can see, the flowers kind of pop out quite brightly. So there's one thing that I'm going to suggest if you're working on a floral like this with lots of shadow, light and shadow. Another great way of blending these in is to take a little bit of your stippling colour. In this case, I'm using my graphite and Enfleur, kind of stippling off again. And I'm actually going to go right up to the edge of some of these leaves and flowers and go over. So I'm adding kind of a little bit of shadow here and there, not too much, just the odd flower, and pushing in the flowers into the background. So I'm adding shadow. I'm kind of thinking light from here, so I'm adding a little bit of shadow. Don't panic if you feel like you've done too much. We're going to clean it up in a minute. So just add a little bit of shadow here and there on the back of some of these leaves. It'll also help that blend. It's nearly virtually dry. It's just got a little residue of paint on here, just underneath each leaf. So the top I'm keeping fresh, just stippling over. So it's bedding in the pattern. It'll really help with that blend. I've got a little bit there that's not so good. I need to load up the paint now for that area. I've just peeled a bit. That was a bit of paper that had kind of buckled. So let me take a little bit of raw paint into there. That's it. Everything's fixable. Happy little accidents like that are fixable. And just, again, tickling sort of on the underneath of these florals, just a little bit across there, a little bit on there. And you can see it's now pushing that pattern kind of into the background. It's adding sort of depth and shadow and light. And seamlessly blending as well at the same time. So the final thing that I'm going to do is, now that this little bit of stippling is dry on the leaves, I've got a small cup of water and a little corner of sponge. And I'm just going to dampen the sponge, take off the excess moisture, and just clean up some little edges. So with the infuser being on there, you can kind of freshen up where you've gone over too far. You can kind of freshen these areas up. Pretty much, I quite like the way that these have turned out anyway. Maybe that one's a little bit too heavy. But you can just freshen up a little bit. Just on the highlighted areas. That's lovely. And that's it. So we're nearly there, guys. I'm going to contend with the lower half of this project. I originally thought that the Versailles dark wax lower half would be good with the top, but I kind of feel like the whole piece needs to be the same colour. So this is a previously painted piece with wax on it. Chalk paint will paint back over wax. A lot of people don't realise that you can just paint straight back over a wax finish. I'm going straight in with graphite as a flat finish. And then I will go back and paint in with a stipple motion to try and create the same on the top. So base coat dry. Now for some more stippling. I'm doing the same as I did on the top. I'm mixing graphite with Enfleur, and I'm just going to pounce the whole frame of this table, adding texture with the brush. So we're at the final hurdle of this paint project, and I'm really happy with the bottom half, although it is rather plain. But this piece is for me and my home, and I kind of like that. When there's all of this embellishment on top, I kind of like the plainness, but it is missing just one more thing. I feel like the pattern is just not enough. So one extra thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a key line to the other half of the tabletop. So I'm gonna pencil it in, I'm gonna eyeball about an inch all the way around, and then we're gonna use a paint color just to add a thin line all the way around. So I'm gonna go in at about an inch and make a loose sort of shaded line. I'm not worrying too much that it's perfect. It's not meant to be perfect, but I just need a guide. I'm keeping my eye where I'm working constantly, so I know about an inch. Obviously nothing through the florals, and I'm going to pick back up where the gap is and stop again. There might be a little bit there, a bit further in. Same thing again, just here, stopping at the leaf, picking up here again. If you're not too sure about making these pencil lines, you could put a small piece of wood and level it with the side as you go along. I'm just quite good at eyeballing where I want these things to be. Maybe a slight shadow there, maybe a little bit in there, and then back on to there. I'm quite happy with that. So when it comes to creating a key line for your project, the right thing to use is a rigger brush. I'm gonna pop that in front of you. As you can see, this brush has a really long tip and it's really fine. And it will allow you to pick up quite a lot of paint on the end of the brush and glide through. So rigger brush is essential for this. Also, the colour that I'm using is Versailles. I've popped it into this container and I've mixed it with a spritz of water. Now this will add a little bit of fluency, not too much, otherwise you'll lose your pigment. Just enough to allow it to kind of flow a little bit more freely. Also, offload your brush. I'm going to offload it on my workbench beside me so I don't fill up with too much paint and get blobs and drips on the surface. There may be a few accidents, but they're always fixable as we go along. So let's get stuck in with this key line. So that's the key line done. It's kind of a little bit wibbly wobbly, but nothing that I can't live with. All I'm gonna do is, because that's quite bright, is I'm gonna take the brush that I was stippling with. I've offloaded as much of the residue of paint as I can, and I'm just gonna soften this in. So I'm gonna kind of stipple over it, just kind of make it so it blends away a little bit more into the pattern. Here and there, just kind of soften it away. So it's not as stronger. You could do this, of course, with wax afterwards, but I don't want to darken this piece up any more than it is. So I'm just going to use the paint, the residue of paint on the paintbrush, just to bed that in so it's not as sharp as it is at the moment. Just breaks it up a little bit more. See, it just softens it all in. Because there's texture on there, kind of scrubbing over it kind of just highlights it. It's kind of dry brushing it a little bit, just to soften that line in. It'll hide some of the imperfections in the line that you've created. Be brave with this one. I think it really does make the biggest of difference. Adding a little key line makes the whole piece kind of look a little bit more hand painted. And that's it. All that's left now is to add some wax. I'm not going to add any tinted waxes. I'm just going to go with clear wax and call it a day. Okay guys, I think I got something wrong, and you probably noticed it as I was going through the process of painting the lower half of this table. Initially I wanted this table to kind of look molded, almost like metal, and I've gone away from the project. I had a sleep, walked back into the workshop and realized that I really did get this lower half wrong. It looks a little bit drab and plain, too plain. So I'm gonna go back in with some dry brushing. If that doesn't work, another full coat of paint. I really did quite like the Versailles. Probably the dark wax was throwing me on the Versailles, but I'm going back in with Versailles with a dry brush. I've loaded my brush up, offloaded onto a cotton rag, and I'm just going to tickle the edges of the raised details. So I'm just going to go in with a light touch all the way along the edges, just to kind of bring back some of the design. There's a little bit of design in there. I'm not going to go too heavy over that because there's texture, so it's going to pick up the texture as well, but just a light touch just to add a bit of detail back into the project. I think just doing, and maybe even a little bit on the edge of the table, that add another key line around the edge of the table. So just adding sort of little bits of detail. So my dry brushing is complete. I've given it another clear coat of wax. I have lost a little bit of the dry brushing on this pattern on the edge. So how I'm going to tackle that is I'm going to go in with some Posh Chalk Patina. This is a gilding wax. The reason I'm going to do this is because there's a little bit more control when I'm using the end of my finger to put this on. It's so shallow, this detail. So I'm just going to take my time, load up my finger and just over the top, just bring that back just a little bit here and there. A little trim along the edge here. I don't want it to be too prominent. I just want it to be in the distance. So that's just about it for today's project. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new here and this is your first time to my channel and have enjoyed this tutorial, there's plenty more to be seen on my channel, so hit subscribe and the notifications bell for future projects. Happy creating.